Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to show you how I make my chicken crust pizza. This is going to be your go-to recipe when you're in the mood for pizza and you don't want the high carb pizza out there. So what I have here in my food processor is the cooked chicken that I've already processed. As you can see, it's pretty fine. And I'm using leftover rotisserie chicken because that's what I had and I wanted to use it up, and I actually prefer that. But there's also the canned chicken. You can buy canned chicken breast or any canned chicken of your choice. Just make sure you drain all of the liquid out before you start the recipe. What I'm doing here is I'm adding the eggs that go into this recipe. So it's easier if you have a food processor or a blender, it's gonna be the easiest way to go. But if you can't do that, you can also just use a large bowl. And maybe chop up your chicken as small as possible on a board with a good knife. It's really not going to affect the taste of the crust. It's going to be great as well. Now, all of the ingredients that you're going to need for this recipe is going to be listed or are going to be listed under the description box of this video, like always. Because for some reason, I did not film the part where I added the cheese or the cheeses that go into this recipe. So I apologize for that, but I still wanted to share this recipe with you. And it's pretty simple. So just processing the eggs here to incorporate into the chicken. And once you have incorporated the eggs in there, you also want to just make sure you check the consistency of the dough. See, it's already becoming a dough. You want to add any spices of your preference. Since this was a rotisserie chicken, it was already seasoned, so I didn't want to really add more seasoning. But if you're using the canned chicken, or if you want to add more flavor, you can add some spices, which I'm going to list down below the amounts. And what I'm going to add here now is the oat fiber. So this is going to act kind of like flour, like a flour substitute. It is not oatmeal. It is the oat fiber, so the fiber from the oat. So there's no carbs in oat fiber. So it's a great ingredient to have and use in all your low carb or a lot of your low carb recipes. I'm using 4 tablespoons of the oat fiber. As you see, it's like a fine powder. It looks very much like flour. If you don't have oat fiber, you don't want to invest in that, and you have coconut flour, you can use coconut flour instead. But coconut flour is very absorbent, so you want to maybe start out with 2 tablespoons and mix it and then kind of check the consistency, which I'm going to show you what it should look like here. So at this point, we have the chicken, the eggs, any spices you want to add in there. I had already added the cheeses, which are parmesan and mozzarella. So as you can see, it starts coming together in a thicker dough, a more consistent, more manageable dough. And this is a great meal prep recipe, you guys, because you can make this ahead of time, and that way when you feel like eating that pizza, you can go ahead and just stick them in the oven and see that. So it's like an actual dough, and that's thanks to the oat fiber. So this is ready to go, and I can start shaping my pizza rounds. And the amount of individual pizzas you're going to get is going to depend on how thick you make your pizza bases or your pizza crust, and also how big they are. I like to use parchment paper. This is really the easiest way to manage this. Otherwise, it's going to stick to your hands and it's going to be a mess. So just have your parchment paper ready. And I'm just going to portion these out to the size that I usually make mine. I usually have them about 6 inches round. You can also just make a large pizza just one whole pizza with this if you're feeding the whole family in one sitting. I like the individual ones because not everybody eats low carb at in my family. So if I just want one individual pizza for me or somebody else, I can just have that at my convenience. So just put the amount of dough that you're going to want for your individual pizza bases, and then put another piece of parchment paper on top. And with your hand, you don't need a rolling pin or anything, but if you have one and you want to use it, you're welcome to. With your hand and the help of the parchment paper, you're just going to pat the dough down to the thickness or thinness that you like. Sometimes I make mine thin, almost like a flatbread. Other times I like it a little bit thicker, so it depends. And you can make these square or any shape for that matter that you like. So once you have it to the even thickness that you like, you can just set it aside and just keep going. And again, you're going to get the amount, anywhere between, with this batter, anywhere between 6 and 8 pizza bases. But you could get less, you could get more, depending on the size you make them and the thickness. So this one's pretty thin, as you can see. I'll show you now. Get closer to the camera. There you go. So it is pretty thin. And the thinner you make these, the crispier they're going to get. So if you like thin crust pizza, then you want them this thin. If you like more of a thicker crust, then just don't make them that thin. Or use more dough. So there's one. And what I do, as you can see here, I already had several made. I just put them on a baking sheet, set them aside, and put them all in the freezer at once. I'm gonna show you another one. Again, it's super simple, you guys. But if you have these done ahead of time, you're definitely gonna always have some kind of lunch or dinner to go to without having to worry about cooking. Sometimes you just don't want to mess with having to make a full meal, or it's just yourself, or you're just in the mood for pizza. I'm always in the mood for pizza. So there it is again. Just portion out the amount of dough that you want, pat it down a little bit to like a round size, and then use your other part of the parchment paper over it, and just go ahead and pat it down and make it as thin or as thick as you like. Now you can also make these as like pizza bites, like individual pizza bites, or pizza bagel looking. I know they sell those in the freezer section. My kids used to love those. So if you have kids, this is also a great way to give them a great meal without the high carb. So you can just make these smaller, maybe about 3 or 4 inches. I don't know, those are the bagel bites or pizza bites are usually pretty small. So you can do that as well. I'm sure the kids will enjoy that, or even for yourself. So there you see again, that one's pretty thin. And I just continue doing that until I am done with all of the dough. And once I am done with all of them, I freeze them on that same baking sheet. Just put them in the freezer, and that way, whenever you're ready, whenever you want to eat pizza, just take it out. And you would pre-bake the crust at 400 degrees for about 10 minutes. Take it out of the oven, add your toppings, and then put it back in the oven at 425 for another 10 to 12 minutes. And your pizza will be ready. Another thing I like to do is, to save time, is I wait till they get a little firm after I've shaped them, and then I bake them all in the oven, the crust, and then I put them back in the freezer once they cool down in that same parchment paper to separate them inside a freezer safe Ziploc bag, as you can see here. And then it's even more of a time saver because then you don't have to pre-bake the crust every time you want one. You can have them all pre-baked, as you can see here. And I use the same parchment paper, so I'm not wasting anything. So here they're solid frozen. You can even use a pan, a non-stick pan, if you don't want to turn on your oven for just one little pizza, and do it there, and that'll work as well because they're already pre-baked. And here they are, you guys, chicken crust pizza. I hope you guys try this recipe and enjoy it. I'm sure you will. If you haven't already done so, subscribe and hit like and share this video. See you guys in the next one.